When challenger Marina Silva pulled ahead of incumbent Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff in the polls a few weeks ago, there was a lot of excitement in Washington, in the business press, and Brazilian financial markets. Rousseff's Workers' Party has been in power for 12 years, and a lot of rich and powerful people, north and south, were ready for a change. Fortune seemed to favor them. The Brazilian economy, having slowed considerably over the past few years, officially went into recession this year, something that would spell the end for many incumbent presidents. Before that, there were street protests over the rising cost of public transport and government spending on the World Cup, and the games themselves had ended in disaster with humiliating 7-1 defeat for Brazil at the hands of Germany. Yet Rousseff has bounced back from every blow and now looks poised to place first in both the first and second rounds of the election. How does this happen, we ask? If Dilma Rousseff is re-elected, it would be because the majority of Brazilians are looking at the 12-year record of the Workers' Party, and for the old and literate enough to remember, comparing this to the past, for the vast majority, the changes are quite remarkable. Despite the slowdown of the past few years and the 2009 world recession, Brazil's GDP per person grew by an average of 2.5% annually from 2003 to 2014. This was more than 3 times the growth rate during the preceding 2 terms of President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, who implemented Washington consensus policies and remains a much preferred statesman in the U.S. Capitol. Before Cardoso, there was a decade and a half of even worse economic failure, during which Washington had even more influence on the economic policy and income per person actually fell. This return to growth, plus the government's use of increased revenues to boost social spending, has reduced Brazil's poverty rate by 55% and extreme poverty by 65%. For those in extreme poverty, the government's internationally renowned conditional cash transfer program provided 60% of their income in 2011, up from 10% in 2003. A hefty increase in the minimum wage, 84% since 2003, after adjusting for inflation, also helped quite a bit. Unemployment has fallen to a record low of 4.9%. It was 12.3% when Lula da Silva took office in 2003. The quality of jobs also increased. The percentage of workers stuck in the informal sector of the economy shrank from 22 to 13%. Brazil's income distribution remains one of the more unequal in the world, but there was significant progress here also from 2003 to 2012. The 40% of the population just below the median nearly doubled their share of the country's income gains as compared to the prior decade. This came at the expense of the richest 10%. The poor have most obviously benefited from this transition of the Brazilian economy, and this is reflected in the polls. But it's not just the poor who improved their well-being. With the median household income of only about $800, the vast majority of Brazilians were set to gain from the rising wages, shrinking unemployment, and significantly increased pensions that the last decade had brought. From the elite eye view, the gains that the ordinary workers have made are not such good news. A new law that required full-time domestic workers, of which there are a lot in Brazil, thanks to the crushing inequality, to be treated as formal employees, with maximum work hours, minimum wages, and Social Security. That was the most recent annoyance for the haves. If Dilma wins, it will be because the majority of Brazilians got a lot of what they voted for. They may want more, and they should, but they are unlikely to opt for a return to the past. John Caspary, reporting live from Brazil.